Being consistent with your form and volume is one of the most difficult things in frame-by-frame animation. 3D softwares are very good at placing objects in 3D space. They are also able to convey the perspective accurately. What if we use Blender, a 3D software, as a guide for our frame-by-frame animation? That's what we're going to explore today. Hi, I'm Marvin Te, and welcome back to our channel. Shout out to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. More on that later. So in this video, I'm going to break down my process on how I was able to achieve this kind of animation. Please note that this isn't a step-by-step process. I'm not gonna teach you how to use Blender. I'm not gonna teach you how to create 3D models. I'm not even gonna teach you how to animate frame by frame. We have a separate tutorial for that. You could check out our channel for that. But this video specifically would be a process video. I'm gonna share my workflow on how I use Blender to be able to improve my frame-by-frame animation. So what we are going to discuss is the difference between 2D and 3D and why sometimes our drawings look flat and how Blender can be used as a guide to improve our drawings. We are also going to discuss the focal length in camera lenses and the camera inside Blender. We are also going to discuss basic lighting. And finally, we are going to discuss how I used all of these information to improve my frame-by-frame animation. So again, this is not a step-by-step tutorial. I'm not going to teach you how to use the software, but instead I'm going to teach you how to think like an animator, how to think like a filmmaker. So I'm going to share the thinking behind the process. So let's start. First, what is Blender? It's an open source 3D software that you can use to create 3D models. You can also use it to animate. Honestly, it's a very powerful tool. And the best part is, it's free. But it's still not the industry standard in terms of if a lot of films are being made using Blender. But slowly, it's getting there. More and more artists are using Blender. So where can you download Blender? You can head to blender.org and just click the download button. So now let's discuss the difference between 2D and 3D. So what is 2D? It means two-dimensional, which is represented by the x-axis for the horizontal direction and y-axis for the vertical direction. If you plot your image into this x and y axis, then it's 2D. 2D shapes are square, circle, triangle, etc. What is 3D? It means three-dimensional. You still have the x and y axis, but you have a third dimension, which is the z-axis. An example of a 3D shape is a cube. A cube still has a square, but in this example, it's at an angle. So it's plotted on the x and y axis, but it has depth through the z-axis. So we can't really draw in 3D, right? Our medium is always flat. For example, here, the screen, it's flat. If you draw on paper, it's flat. So the best that we could do is give an illusion that our drawings are in 3D, but at the end of the day, it's still 2D. So how do we create an illusion that what we're drawing is 3D? We rely the rules in perspective for that. And perspective is really a difficult topic, especially when you are starting out. And that's mostly because if we are starting out, we rely on our preconceived idea about an object. And oftentimes, our memory is wrong. So I'm going to draw a couple of cubes in different angles. Now I'm going to recreate these in Blender. I'm going to draw on top of this so that it's a fair comparison. Now you'll see that my drawings are a bit flat compared to the ones done in Blender. That's because I made a lot of mistakes in terms of perspective, in terms of vanishing points, etc. So you can actually use Blender as a guide or as a reference to see if you have made any mistake. And if you are the one, so a big note, right? If you are the one that made the 3D model, if you made it yourself, then you can trace it. Okay, that's the only time that you could trace it if you're the one who did the 3D model. So if you're the one who did the 3D model, you can trace it. Or you can draw on top of it and add on it. Now let's talk about camera lenses. So if you own a DSLR or a mirrorless camera, chances are you have like a lens that you attach to the camera, in which you can zoom in by twisting or rotating the lens. And if you twist or rotate in the opposite direction, then that's going to zoom out. So zoom in, zoom out, right? And this is the amount of how you're gonna zoom in and zoom out is denoted by the focal length number. This is usually in millimeters, like 15 millimeters, 20 millimeters, 30, or even like 50 millimeters. So different lens has different range. In the past, I thought that if you zoom in the lens in your camera, that is the same as if you zoom out and just go near your subject. I thought they would yield the same result, but turns out I was wrong. They are not the same. So let's recreate that in Blender. So this is Blender, and we have a camera, and currently I'm not like in the camera. This is like the viewer. If you want to go inside the camera, what the camera sees, you click this icon, so click this one, and you're going to be inside the camera. The moment you move, so let's try and rotate, that's going to go out of the camera and back into the viewport or the viewer, right? And if you want to control the camera while you're inside the camera, you press N on your keyboard and this would pop up, go to view, and then click this one. Let me just adjust this. This is camera to view. You click that one, and what it does is now if I'm going to rotate, it's now going to move the camera. I am inside the camera, but I'm also moving the position and rotation of my camera. So if we're gonna click our camera right here, this on the right, I'm gonna click that one. And then if we're gonna click now this icon, this green camera icon, we could see that the focal length is 50. So this is what the focal length is. So I'm going to go out of the camera. See, it's like that. Now I'm gonna click this icon, and now let's bring our camera far away to something like this, right? Something like that. And now let's go inside our camera, and now let's zoom. Okay, so I'm gonna change this to maybe 70 or 80. So I'm just gonna do something like this, right? So maybe 84, right? 84. And now I'm gonna create a snapshot of this one. So in the past, I thought that, so let's go out of the camera, and you can see that the focal length, see this one? Take a look at the camera, it's much longer. I thought that this would be the same if we like zoomed out in our camera and just go near, right? So let's do that. Okay, so I have like saved this one. Right now, let's zoom out. Let's change the focal length, make this one smaller, right, to like 16. That's fine, right? Now let's go out of our camera. I'm gonna click this one, and now let's bring this closer. And I thought that those two things, right, is the same and would give the same look. Now let's go back here. So it's not that close, right? Let's bring this closer. And as you can see, this one is very distorted. And let's compare the two. They are very different. So that's the advantage of a 3D software, because if I'm going to draw this one or draw in this specific angle, this is very hard for me to visualize. I won't be able to visualize a cube like this, but with a 3D software, that's very easy. So here I have modeled a character, a female character, and it doesn't look good, but this is good enough for a reference. Now let's go inside the camera. So let's take a look. This is 15 millimeter, right? So it's this is how it looks like. So I'm gonna create a screenshot and let's compare later, right? And now let's bring the focal length to around 20. So I have zoomed out there. And now let's bring this one closer, right? So I'm gonna like go out and now let's bring this closer. To maybe something like that. Let's go inside. Bring it a bit closer. And let's go inside of the camera. And now let's compare both. You'll see that they look different. So now I'm going to explain Dolly Zoom. So Dolly Zoom is a technique in cinematography where you, for example, you have a camera. So you are going to either like move forward or move back, right? So, but as you move forward, as the camera moves forward, you're going to adjust the lens accordingly. So as you move forward, you're gonna twist the lens or adjust the lens accordingly. So this technique is what you call Dolly Zoom. So we are now going to see these two images animated. So now let's apply a Dolly Zoom to this character, right? I'm not really going to thoroughly explain how to animate in Blender, so this isn't the video for that, but just, you know, a quick tip or quick explanation. So if we want to animate the camera, click the camera, and this one, this orange square, that's where the properties of the camera are. And I'm going to click this circle. That will create a keyframe for the location, the position and the rotation. So I will click all of them just to be sure that we don't miss on anything. So if you have animated in After Effects, it's very, very similar. So now let's move forward in time. So this is like the timeline. And also, aside from the rotation and the position, we also need to create a keyframe on the focal length. So I'm going to click this one now because this is where the focal length is located. So for the focal length, I'm also gonna click this one. So we're gonna animate that property too, right? And then we're gonna move forward in time, maybe at around 80 frame here. And then let's change the focal length from 50. I'm gonna change it now to 20. So we haven't created a keyframe yet. We need to create a keyframe. You'll see now that this is a diamond. I'm gonna click that now, and we have a keyframe, right? So this represents that from here, this is 50 millimeter for the focal length, and it's going to interpolate to 20 millimeter for the focal length. So that's the focal length. So now let's go out of our camera, and we're also going to animate because we haven't like animated the position, right? You can see here that we only animated the focal length, right? So we already have created, so I'm gonna click this one now. We already have created the keyframes for the location and the rotation. Now let's move forward in time. And here we're gonna bring this forward, something like that. And just to be sure, I'm just gonna add a keyframe for everything, right? And now let's go inside of the camera and see how that looks like. See that? That is the Dolly Zoom, right? And as you can see, the look of it changes, right? So I think this is like popular technique for, let's say, horror movies, or maybe like there's some like bad feeling about it. It makes you feel a certain way for sure, right? That it's like, you know, something is gonna happen, something bad gonna happen. maybe this character would, there's gonna be like an opponent this character is going to face, right? So that's like the technique. So now let's go out of the camera and see what happens, right? Look at the focal length, right? So the focal length is like changing, but as we change the focal length, we also move forward. And the effect is, this is the effect. So a 3D software like Blender is also good for lighting. Sometimes you would wonder, right? Like if the light source is here, where would the shadows be? If we adjust the light source, maybe bring it down, how would that affect the shadows? What would the shape of the shadows be? Or what if you have a light source here and a light source here? What would the shadow look like, right? So that's difficult when you're doing it on your own. But of course, that's the goal, right? The goal is to be able to know where the shadows are, even without a 3D software. That is the goal, and we will continue to train towards that goal. But if you are like just learning, or if you are in a hurry, you are in a tight deadline, then using a 3D software like Blender as a guide is a very effective and efficient way to get things done. For example, when the head turns, with Blender, just set the light source and the shadows are automatically done for you. And then you can use the 3D animation as reference for your frame-by-frame animation. Now we're gonna apply lighting. I already have set up the lighting for this because I've already done this like last year. So this is a different kind of like viewport rendering, this one. If you click this one, this icon, it's gonna also render the lighting. So I'm gonna click this, and this is, so let's go out of our camera, and I have two lightings here, this one and this one. So if you know your lighting setup, like key light, fill light, backlight, if you know the lighting basics, like the thing that they do in filmmaking, then that's going to be an advantage to you when you are doing animation, whether that's 3D animation or 2D animation, right? So the important thing here is this isn't the final thing, right? So this is how that would look like. But the key here is to place the lighting that it's going to have that harsh shadow. It needs to be clear what the shadow and light are. Like for example, this is in light and this part here is in shadow, right? And going by that logic, actually we don't really need the fill light here. This is the fill light. So I'm going to hide that because it only adds to the confusion. So I'm gonna hide that. Now it's very clear what is in light and in shadow. So if the final product is 3D, which in this case it isn't, then it's like good to have like a very pleasing looking image. But if your intention is to use this as reference, then it's better to have a lighting that's very clear. So here we only have light and shadow. So let's go out of our camera. This is our lighting, right? So if I'm gonna place it here, so it's important, or it's gonna be easier if you know your lighting, right? So just a quick tip. So for your key light, always place it above the character, not on the same level. Why? Because this kind of lighting isn't usual, right? When you go out of your house, where is the light? The sun is above you. If you are inside the house and it's nighttime, you turn on the lights. Where are the light bulbs located? It's above you, right? So just like by default, right? This isn't like a hard rule, but just by default, if we're going to set up a lighting, place it above, right? And then you could set the direction. And my thinking here, or the thinking process behind like where I placed the lighting, is where I like the shadows best, and I like I like the shape of the shadows in this. So that's the reason why I have decided to place it there, right? But what if you start from scratch and you don't have a lighting, right? So this isn't a how-to tutorial, but okay, I'm just gonna show you, right? So that's going to be Shift A, and then go to light here, and then you have 3 kinds of light. You could choose the sun. For the sun, it doesn't matter where you place this, because if you're going to render, right, that's always, it's like direction. If we're going to change the direction of this, so it doesn't matter what the position is. If it's a sun, what matters is like the rotation of this. That's going to affect like the shape of like the shadows. And if you go to this like icon here, this light bulb, then we could set the strength, right? So we could bring this to 2, making the light source stronger. We could even change that. So I'm just gonna adjust my UI so you could read. So currently it's the sun. We can convert this to point. So now it's on point, but the power is 3 watts, right? So imagine this is like a bulb and it's only 3 watts. It's very, very low. So let's bring this to 1000 maybe, right? So that it's much brighter. Bring this closer. And then you could now adjust the lighting. And once you're happy with the results, so let's go back inside the camera. Once you're happy with the results, so I'm just going to hide that one, hide the sun, and then I'm going to reveal like my original lighting. For example, if you're already good with this, then you export, you render the animation, right? So if you click this icon, this is for, oh, not that one. I'm looking for the output. This one, yeah, this is correct. And if you scroll down for the output, just click this one, like where you'd want the files to be exported to, right? So once you have set a folder here, go to render and then render animation, and that's going to export now the animation. So that's going to be an image sequence. What do you do with the image sequence? You can bring it to Photoshop and convert that to GIF, or you could import that in After Effects and export it as a video, right? But this video isn't showing you how to export, maybe in another video, but that's what you do with the image sequence. So in my case, this is like the GIF. I converted the animation as a GIF, and this is what we will import in Adobe Animate later. As you can see, animation isn't just one field, right? It has like a lot of interconnected fields in order for you to animate effectively. And all of the fields in the creative field are like this, really. Like drawing isn't just drawing. You also need to learn perspective, anatomy, proportion, lighting. And animation isn't just animation, right? Just this video alone, we've tackled a lot of things. We've tackled a little bit about 3D. We've also tackled a little bit about photography, about the camera lenses, and also one of the cinematography technique, the Dolly Zoom. And if you want to learn Blender, then Skillshare is a good place to start. I myself have used Skillshare. For those that don't know what Skillshare is, it's an online platform that hosts a lot of classes taught by industry professionals. So for example, you want to learn Blender. Just search Blender and you'll find classes related to that topic. Skillshare also have these what you call learning paths. So let's click this. It's basically a curated list of classes to get you started on that specific topic. And Skillshare didn't ask me to mention this specific class, but I'm gonna do it anyway because it's related to what we have discussed so far. It's a class by Dolly Liu, and the title is Film Lighting Made Simple. It's a short class, it's only 24 minutes long, and with it, you'd already get the basics in lighting. And that's one of the many classes you'll find on Skillshare. And as I've mentioned earlier, animation isn't just animation. Other fields could also enhance your animation skills, fields like 3D or lighting. And the good thing about Skillshare is it has a wide array of classes on various fields, like photography, filmmaking, storyboarding, colors, graphic design, and a whole lot more. Click the link in the description, and the first 500 people to use the link will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Now let's continue, and now we are in the animation part. So this is now my sketch. So I'm just gonna scrub through the timeline. This is in Adobe Animate, and I'm gonna hide like the sketch. So I'm gonna zoom in a bit. So this is like the video file, right? So I think I ended up, so this was like long ago. And I think I ended up converting the GIF into a video because it's much, I think much simpler for me to import, right? So I have imported that here, and I just traced this like image, and that's all right. I could just trace over this because I made the model itself, right? If this was like, if you downloaded the model, then you can't trace this, but you could still use it for reference depending on the license of the model, right? So it's like, it's better if you are the one who created the 3D model so that you don't have to worry about copyright, right? So this is the sketch. This is like the design. I have like added some fantasy setting clothes. And then again, with the lighting, it should be clear where the light and shadows are. And that's this, right? You could clearly see which the shadows are. And also for the eyes, I've added like some highlights. I've also added that there, right? And then I also like, I didn't like copy it exactly. Like I animated it on top. I added like a blink, right? Like a shock look with mouth movements. So this technique, this like using 3D, it's not like a shortcut because you still need to know how to animate, right? So this is a guide that's gonna help animators. If you don't know how to animate, then this technique is just like too advanced for you. You still need to learn more like basic fundamentals before you can even like try and attempt this one. Because if you don't know how to animate and you use a 3D program and use this technique, it's gonna look bad, right? But if you already have some skills in animation and you're going to use the 3D guide technique, that's going to enhance what you already have, right? So I'm just gonna hide like the sketch. So I'm just gonna create a new layer. So basically what this is, you know, you can, once you have like the model, now you could like draw on top of this and even like add your own style, right? You don't really have to copy like the eye, but at least now you have like a reference of where the position is, where the iris should be, and then, you know, you could use your own style, right? I don't have to follow that one. Maybe a line would do, right? And here for the mouth, maybe not that wide, maybe just something like this. I mean, that's another option, right? That's another option that you could do with this technique. You don't have to copy it like exactly, but you are like using this as a reference. You can even change the hairstyle, but if you do, you're going to lose the benefit of using a 3D where you know where how the hair is going to form when we are going to change the focal length. But if you are a bit risky and you want to try a different like hairstyle, I mean, you can, right? Like, let's make her hair a bit shorter. I mean, you can, and maybe change her clothes. you can have it like that, right? So I'm gonna hide that. And then you can repeat the process as we like animate forwards. And we could also like, we're animating ontos to give that frame by frame animation feel like better. There's like a unique feel to the ontos, so we are like applying that, right? So, but I'm not going to finish this, right? But I'm just trying to demonstrate that this is how you use this technique, right? This way, you've gotten the position of the eye, the eyebrow, and the mouth correctly. But also, you need to, in order for you to be able to model in 3D, you need to know how to use the software, but at the same time, you also need to know a little bit about the proportion of the human head. Because even if you know how to use the 3D program, Blender, if you don't know the right or correct proportions of the human head, you're going to make some mistakes and that's not gonna look good. So going back, this is the animation. So let's hide now the guide and I'm just gonna press enter. And I also like animated in a background to emphasize that shock. Like, I don't know what situation this is. Maybe she sensed danger. Maybe there's like a strong monster somewhere. Maybe she is a sensor type mage or something, and she sensed like this is like a high level monster that she cannot beat, and that's her expression. Oh, by the way, if you want to import like an MP4 into your Adobe Animate, go to File, go to Import, and Import Video. This pop-up is going to open up, and then you need to click this one, Embed H.264 Video in the timeline. Click that and click this and find your file, and then once you're done, click Next and just click Import. So this is now the cleanup and with color. So I'm just gonna press enter. So with regards to the design, you'll see here that we have like the light and the shadow, and I also like added in some like harsh shadow using like black, right? So to give that graphic novel look to this, right? And also like adding more details to the like background effects. And the way that I animated this is overall it's ontos, but on this part where she gives that shock expression, so I changed from ontos to on ones so that I don't lose like the detail of the easing, so you could feel that smooth movement here. But be careful if you're going to plan or mixing ontos with on ones. Make sure it's not noticeable to the viewer, right? So if you're going to play this, the on ones blends well, right? You can't like recognize like it's actually on ones, right? Because this is like a well placed. The timing just works, and the way that it's on ones here makes sense overall to the animation, because this one's like very quick. And if I'm gonna change this to ontos, then the easing would somehow be lost. And because it's now on ones, you could clearly see like the movement, like how she closed her eyes, right? So I'm gonna convert this to ontos real quick. So I have converted this to ontos. If you see the frames, there are no ontos. So it still is a bit smooth, but we lack that detail, right? So I'm gonna bring this back again to on ones. And let's have a look again. So lastly, we're gonna bring the animation into After Effects. If you have been watching our tutorials, you know that I'm a big user of After Effects. So I use Adobe Animate for frame-by-frame animation work, but I use After Effects for compositing and other like added animation and color correction. So it's just very basic, just 3 layers. This is like the white solid, right? You could change the background color if you want. You could even like add in, because this one's like black, right? And for the animation, for the cleanup, I added in like a very subtle zoom in. So just scale up. So I'm going to preview this. So it now looks like that, right? So I'm going to duplicate this. So duplicate, that's Command D for working on a Mac. That's Control D for working on a Windows, right? And for this cleanup, I'm gonna hide this one below. I'm gonna press U on my keyboard, and let's delete just the animation for the duplicate, so that you'll see what it looks like without the subtle zoom in, right? It looks like that. It's already good, but it's a bit flat, right? Doesn't have that dramatic effect. But if we're gonna add like a subtle zoom in, right, it feels very smooth, and now it feels like you have felt what this character have felt by adding that subtle like zoom. Along with the Dolly Zoom, we added like a subtle zoom in After Effects, and it adds to the like overall. Now, what does this adjustment layer do? So I'm going to delete this one, right? So it's just like 3 layers. So I'm gonna reveal this one. Now I'm gonna click this. It's basically just a color correction, making this more fantasy looking. So let's preview. So it looks like that. We could even like change, we could even animate the color of this. So let's go to the effects. So I'm going to collapse this. So this is just 2 effects, the glow and Lumetri color, right? So if I'm gonna hide the glow, you'll see the effect that's without glow, with glow. So I'm gonna expand the glow, right? These are the properties we could play around with. If I'm gonna bring this to 1, that's gonna make it very bright. If that's what you're going for, then good. But I just want something subtle, so that's why I picked 0.2, just something like that. And the glow radius, that's all. You could look at this. If you're gonna like bring the radius like down, it's gonna make the glow a bit more intense. And it's like the glow radius that's going to spread out like the glow. And the glow threshold, so if we're gonna adjust this one, you'll see it also has like an effect. Changing these 3, you need so you can like manipulate these values to get the look that you're going for. And so I'm gonna collapse this one now, and let's go to Lumetri color. For Lumetri color, I just changed the temperature to 50. So I'm gonna bring this to 0. That's the original, right? And if we're gonna move to the left, it's gonna change the color. The tint also adds change the color. So this is like a more of a like filmmaking, like film editing color correction like technique. But I'm just gonna change this to 50, right? So it looks like that. And because this is like After Effects, we could even like change, like maybe it started off as warm. So I'm going to create a keyframe for the temperature and the tint, so that when it goes like black, right, like that, we're gonna like adjust, maybe make it like green, something like that. Like, oh no, you're in danger. Also, if you notice that in horror films, they usually have like that cold look, right? So let's try and replicate that one. So maybe something like this, right? So from something bright, change the color, right? So we could also like animate that in. So I'm just gonna press U here, and what I want is it's gonna change color or start animating later on in the timeline. So it's gonna like start animating here and like that. So now it feels like she's really in a dark place, a dangerous place. Maybe this opponent is super strong. And I'm just gonna select both of these and easy ease. So easy ease is F9. So that's how it looks like. So I hope you learned something today, and I hope it opened your mind somehow that creative fields, different creative fields are interconnected. That what you learn in 2D animation, you can apply in 3D animation or vice versa. And this concept isn't just limited to animation. It also applies to other creative fields like photography, cinematography, anatomy, perspective, and various other creative fields. They reinforce each other. So it's important to have a learning mindset, to continually learn, to be curious, to be genuinely curious. And if you are curious, then that's going to lead you to ask better questions. And hopefully, with better questions, that's going to lead you to better answers. And again, if you want to try Skillshare, click the link in the description, and the first 500 people to use the link will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. So that's it. I hope you liked this video, and if you did like this video, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.